Welcome to PENSDOWN. PENSDOWN is where we tell the storyteller's story. The newsmaker and the presenter, the news reporter and the presenter become the newsmaker on PENSDOWN. We turn the tables, we turn the CCTV camera onto ourselves as journalists and get you to understand what we go through, which unfortunately we cannot insert in our news reports. Today, I have been joined by a colleague all the way from his base in Nigeria. He is the media officer at the Center for Communication and Social Impact, CCSI, a Nigeria-based NGO birthed by Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, United States. Before joining CCSI, he worked as a multimedia journalist and social media executive at the Nation newspaper. He has over 10 years experience in the media, starting out as an editorial assistant at Tel Communications, publishers of Tel Magazine and Broad Street Journals. He was a freelance writer and editor for a Birmingham-based magazine, High Society International Magazine, for over 3 years before becoming a media consultant to Africa Young Entrepreneurs, AYE, where he worked closely with the international president, Sammy Smart Francis. He is a thoroughbred multimedia journalist and corporate communications professional with experience in writing, media and public relations, media buying, social and digital media consultancy, community mobilization, media publishing, photography, and videography production. As part of his love for teaching, he taught new media as a junior lecturer to celebrated media icon Lekon Tufodorin at the Nigeria Institute of Journalism from 2017 to 2018. He has been a Nigerian delegate to the UN World Press Freedom Day in Latvia, where he headed the United Nations Youth Newsroom for the event. He is also an alumnus of the Deloitte-funded Innovation Lab, Unleash Lab in Copenhagen, Denmark. He is a member of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, Journalists for Christ, Africa Press Team, Africa Young Entrepreneurs, Code for Nigeria, among others. From his base in Nigeria, David Lawal has joined me on PENSDOWN today. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here too.
I reckon you have a lot of expertise in digital media or social media, which is actually the live wire of business today. How is social media disrupting the practice of journalism?
So here in Nigeria, the disruption is quite impactful, given the sense that a majority of those who practice in the mainstream media are struggling with acceptance or acknowledgement of the fact that digital media has come to stay, which a major part of it is social media itself. So the fact that they are yet to fully embrace the innovations that social media has to offer, that digital media has to offer, it's kind of bringing about some frictions in the practice and experience of journalism in the country.
There are richer bloggers in Africa than richer journalists. Social media has created these millionaires. Unfortunately, we cannot count maybe so many or any journalists among them. What did we not do as journalists that has made the potential of social media to be harnessed by untrained communication professionals while we sit aloof?
Okay, so I'm going to speak from the perspective of someone who had the opportunity of working alongside bloggers in carrying out my job, because most times when I was in the newsroom, my beat was like I covered basically all beats because my work was online. So I
Okay.
wasn't specific to a bit. So
Mm.
there are times I'm on business desk today. Tomorrow I'm writing for what's it called, agriculture. The next day I'm writing for aviation. The next
Yeah.
day you find me writing for
For sports or
what's
something.
it called, maybe IT, yeah, sports. So like I touched all aspects of the
Mm.
media while writing, like all bits. So there are times that I had to like write for business most times, and then I have the opportunity of working with PR firms, and then I'm meeting with bloggers who are coming to meet with this PR people. You understand? So
Yeah.
they are richer bloggers because bloggers are out for business,
Mm.
and then the ethics, that guiding ethics that journalists are working by. So they are free to do and undo, sort of. They don't have the
Mm.
regulations, they don't have gatekeepers, they don't have, they are the gatekeepers themselves. They make the rules, they do and undo, basically.
Mm.
You understand? So, where as a journalist, you have limitations as to collecting what is called brown envelope or collecting money, which in the part of ethics will influence your objectivity in your reporting.
Mm.
The blogger does not have that. There's no code as to that for the blogger.
Mm.
So bloggers are out, they are communicating with businesses. You know what? I have this traffic. I have, and what businesses want is visibility. What they want
Yeah.
is the traffic. They want the traction. So what bloggers do is they dedicate time, tell all sort of do all sort of things to build traffic. Just get the traffic. Once they have the traffic, then they start reaching out to businesses to say, "See, I have 1 million reach. I have 1 million people on my as my followers. If you give me your advert, if you allow me to tell your story, if you allow me to do this, I can leverage on that and then spread the news for you. Just give me this amount of money. Let me do it for you and see." That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it that actually broke that made bloggers um, prominent in the country, in Nigeria here, is
Mm.
politics, where people want gist, politics and entertainment.
Yeah.
People want gist and they want fresh gist, like
Mm-hmm.
as it's happening, the moment it's happening. So
Mm.
people who work with entertainment, like actors, artists, and
Mm.
people who work in politics also had friends who were bloggers who had the opportunity of being bloggers at that time. And because like I said the other time, journalism has rules, guiding rules that will not allow you
Yes.
break certain news because you break the
Yeah.
news now, and then when you have to get to a point that you might be forced to want to tell who your source is because
Mm.
it's either you're telling the news and your editor has friend in government. There are people who have interests to
Mm.
protect. So when you bring the news to the newsroom, the editor says, "Oh, the news is about this person. No, this news cannot fly." Just because he has interest or
Mm.
the sub editor has interest somewhere down the gatekeeping process, somebody has interest and that
Yeah.
story is frustrated. You understand? But for the
Mm.
blogger, he's just alone. When people who work closely with politicians and those who work closely with entertainment, the entertainment industry realize that looks like if we break this news, we're not interested, we're not happy this is happening. Let's tell it to the people. Now, if we tell
Mm.
it to our media friends, for some reasons this thing might not fly, or it might even threaten the person's job. For example, it's
Mm.
okay, let me tell it to this blogger. And then the blogger without conscience, the blogger without objectivity, the blogger
Yeah.
without any ethics, without any rules or regulation, who doesn't even know how to write a news story, doesn't know what the W's, 5W's and H is, just breaks the news. This politician was caught naked with this artist, or this
Yeah.
politician was caught pants down with a 13-year-old girl. Everybody wants to hear. Everybody wants
Mm.
to read the story. It could just be a two statements, two paragraph information,
Yeah.
but everybody is aware already that it has happened. That blog is building traffic, and then tomorrow, if that blog is reaching out to a business to say, sponsor your product on my platform, they will reach out because they know when the information gets there, people are there to see. There is a
Mm.
prominent one in the country, and then that's one of the ways she was able to grow her followership until she started having people in politics, in government, who were giving her intels, giving her first-hand information as to things happening in government, the things that they are not able to freely tell the journalists because of the guiding, the other
Yeah.
factors that are limiting the practice of journalism for in the country. You You understand? So there are many interests in journalism that frustrate the work of the first gatekeeper, who is the reporter. And as a result, the journalists are not allowed to go all out to practice the way they should have practiced. And I think that's one of the things that gave bloggers the leadway in the country.
How did you discover the journalist in you?
Okay, so as a young man, I think my mother discovered me. I would say she discovered me because yeah, right. I actually wanted to be um, a science student.
Okay.
I like being challenged with the toughest of issues or toughest of anything at the time. So as of the time I was in college, the toughest at that time was to be a science student.
Yeah.
If you weren't a science student, people see you as you're not tough, you're not strong, you're not a strong man, a strong guy. So I really wanted to be that strong guy. I wanted to be a science student. And then my mom jokingly said, we have 3 science students in the house. We have 2 commercial students in the house. You be the hard student. I'm like, why me? She was like, okay, so you're the one who is in college at the moment. And then I think you should do arts. And then in addition to that, you kind of like talking, you kind of like advocating for people, you like to defend people's rights. Maybe you'll be a lawyer someday, or perhaps you'll be a newscaster. And then I was like, okay, I think lawyer is more like it. Lawyer is more like it. Being a lawyer is more like it. So I went to the arts department, studies and everything. And then somehow, some kind in school, I found myself in literary and debating uh, departments, literary and debating club. Um, I was the president of the club at the time. Started writing a lot of articles, doing debating, doing quiz for the school. And then, so like I was literally building my capacities until I got into the universities. And then when I was entering university was when my mom said, I think you should do journalism, study mass communication. And I was like, okay, now this law thing is not going to work. It looks like it's mass communication that's going to work. And then because I respected that so much, and then I was like, okay, let me do it for you and see how it's going to work. If I do journalism and it's not working, I'll cross to law. And then she was like, at least do journalism, let's see how it goes. So I went into college, I went to university to do journalism, mass communication. And then I soon started campus newspaper. I was writing on campus, I was publishing news. And then so I started growing in that direction. Basically, it's what I do, like wherever I am, I just try to thrive and be my best. And then so I became my best on campus. And then it was on campus I met Mr. Otufoduri. And then so he became like my mentor. From there, I would write, I'll send to him, he would look at it and say, okay, adjust it this way, you can do better. So there was a time we had our student week. And then that was when I realized that, okay, I think I actually wanted to write, make a display of our news articles on campus, all the articles we're publishing. So we all made our best presentations and everything. And then when he was one of the judges, one of those who came on campus that day, on the day we having the exhibition. So while we were going around, you put your story with your byline, and then so editors will come around, different editors will come around, they look at the stories and then pick like, oh, I like this story. Who wrote this story? So we're all there. And then my story was one of the stories that editors were pointing at, like, oh, I like this story. Oh, who's this person? And then everybody was pointing, oh, that's him, that's David, oh, that's David. And then editor picked interest in me and was like, oh, after school, let's see what we can do together. And then, so from there, I went for service. I was writing stories. I was serving in Kano State, and it was a time that Boko Haram was at the heat of it. So I was writing stories from Kano. I was sending to the Nation newspaper in Lagos, and they were able to use them. So that made me proud. And after school, he offered me an opportunity to work with the Nation newspaper when the vacancy was there. So that's how my journalism practice started.
Wow.
But I had exposure to Tell magazine at first. I had exposure to Tell magazine where I can't. My story is not complete if I don't tell my tell story. I was the time we were supposed to do internship in school in the university, and my peers were saying they wanted to go to a place where they could get money, and then so they were mentioning some media platforms, some media houses, and then I told them, I said, really don't want money at this time. I think what I want is the experience. I
Yeah.
need to grow my experience. I need to learn. When I have the experience, they will pay for it. I like that. That was what I used then. That when I have the experience, they will pay for it. If I go for money now, I can't buy the experience much later in life. Let me get the experience now. And I
Yeah.
started asking around, where can I learn? Where will I be groomed and really stretched? And so some people mentioned, why not go to Tell Magazine? Some people say, oh, they'll kill you there. Tell Magazine is very tough. It's hard to survive as a young person. I was like, yes, that's where I want to go because I like the tough things. Like,
Yeah.
that's where I want to go. So I went to Tell Magazine, did the test. So I was asked to do an interview like they were going to employ me like a staff, although I was an
Wow.
intern. Yeah, I think it was a time that they really didn't want to employ people. So they're looking for ways to cut off people. So they subjected me to the real test interview, like, and then I wrote the interview question, did everything, submitted, and then I went. And 2 weeks after, I got a mail, like a letter was sent to me that I've been accepted for my internship 6 months. And I was like, oh, really? I made it. And then I became an intern. And then what was it? I really grew at Cell Magazine. I grew a lot. I was able to do my horizon expanded. I was able to tell a lot of stories from different perspectives. And then, so my story is kind of rich because I studied broadcast journalism in school. And then my first exposure to the media was Tell Magazine. So I have experience in broadcast, I have experience in magazine writing, I have experience in newspaper writing when I went to the Nation newspaper, and then now I'm doing digital journalism. So like this, I've touched every aspect of journalism. Although it could be briefly
Yeah.
here, maybe
Yeah.
1 year here, 2 years here, 3 years here, but I have experience in almost all aspects of journalism. I'm even kind of touching filmmaking kind of into now. So there's a lot to
On
learn.
on
And the data
hindsight, would
journalism
you
is there as
say
well, visualization.
on hindsight, would you say your mother's diagnosis of who she wanted you to be was excellent?
Perfect. Yes. She's kind of proud of me now, though. I think she's proud of me, but I think I'm proud of her than she's proud of me. Like
Oh,
she made the right choice for me. And yes.
does journalism pay?
I would say yes. And it's a yes and no kind of question. Yes, because as journalism, the field has the opportunity to um, expose you to a lot of people, connections, and all of that that are able to put things on your like put food on your table, make you become someone or somebody. But there was a time I met a man. I was applying for something in Ogun State, like a different state where I stay, and I didn't introduce who I was to the people organizing the thing, and then it was a government office, and then they were being difficult, and then one elderly man came in and was hungry, like angrier than I was. I was trying to keep my cool, but he couldn't keep his cool that time. I think he's had it tougher with them than I did. Then the man blew hot, and then out of anger was like, "Don't talk to me like that. I'm a veteran journalist." And then I turned to look at the man. I was like, I was really young in journalism as of that time. You know, when
Yeah,
you're young, you're very proud and
yeah,
overzealous. Like I'm a journalist, I can do
that's
anything, I
right.
can go
Yeah,
anywhere.
yeah.
So I kind of looked at the man, then looked at him from head to toe, and I was like, if this is what being a veteran journalist is, I don't want to be one. Now, why is because it was looking tattered, it was looking
Mm,
unkempt, it was looking, I don't use the word terrible, it wasn't
mm,
looking well,
yeah.
right? I wasn't proud of being a journalist that moment. I wasn't proud of being a journalist that moment.
Mm,
Now, when I kept growing in journalism, I kept remembering that man, and I keep asking myself, what happened? What could have happened? Could this happen to me also in journalism? Were there things he didn't do or that he did that led him that path? Or are there things I could do differently? Right? And then I found out that there are lots of journalists that are hungry and bitter, not because they can, not because they're not good writers, not because they're not best at their practice, but there are some factors that limit you as a journalist. One, if you're a journalist and you are not intentional about writing award-winning stories, you're not intentional about submitting your stories for awards, you're not intentional about growing your capacity, you're not intentional if you are all out for the stipends that will come from press releases, and then you just do news and you do news, you do news, you do news, you do news, and then you're not careful with the platform that you work with, they hold you salaries. If you are just the news writer, just the news writer, just the news writer, you're just very regular. You understand? So for being a regular journalist, it won't pay. It's frustrating because even the platform would get to a point where it is struggling to keep up with paying salaries if it is just doing news alone. Because now, if you look at journalism in the country, I'm speaking from Nigeria here, a lot of news platforms in the country now have foundations, which allows them access grants from donor organizations.
Yeah.
That gives them capacity to do investigative stories. Beyond doing investigative stories, they are able to keep their heads, they're able to keep their heads afloat. They have funds, they're able to do a lot than just do news. When you do only news, you do only news as a journalist, you will get to a point where it doesn't pay anymore.
Yeah.
So which was why I diversified from being just a news journalist into social media, and then from social media, because that time I realized that the media in Nigeria was not maximizing social media for visibility. So I went into social media, and then from social media I grew into digital media, which helped me garner some experience in data journalism, data visualization, and infographics, and all of that. So from there, I moved on to multimedia journalism, video editing, video shooting, and all of that. So I didn't just stay on news writing, which would have made me a terrible or a frustrated veteran journalist eventually if I grew up and be like that man I want to be. If you ask me from my experience, from my knowledge of, I have colleagues that I met in the newsroom that I left in the newsroom. I met them in the newsroom, I left them in the newsroom, and because they are regular. So it's frustrating to be regular. That's just that's my point. It's frustrating to be regular, but from my experience, I would say journalism has paid.
A lot of trained, qualified journalists are abandoning the crafts. Some are going into corporate communications, public relations. Others are just launching onto anything at all for survival. Why is there so much attrition in the profession? What is going on?
So, I'm a corporate.
Yes.
When you ask that question, um, I'm a corporate myself because
Are guilty as charged.
I'm guilty as charged. Yes. So again, I'm going to speak from my perspective, from my side of the table. So honestly speaking, we have different reasons why we might want to opt out of practice. I really want to remain in practice. I made an effort to return to practice last month. 2 months ago, I made an effort to return to practice, reached out to one of the biggest brands in the country, did interview and everything, but the pay, we couldn't agree on the pay. I even offered to reduce what I currently earn by 30%, just because I am passionate about practicing. I wanted to reduce what I currently earn by 30% just so I could return to practice. But they still couldn't offer me that.
Wow.
And we both agreed that they needed me. I wanted them also. I wanted to return to practice, but they couldn't afford to pay me. And I said, okay, I'm going to reduce my current pay by 30% just so I can come back to practice. But they still couldn't offer me that. Now, one of the reasons why people opt out of practice is they basically could be the pay, but for me, it wasn't the pay as much as it is about being able to practice objectively. The way it's going in the country, there are lots of interest, like I mentioned earlier. There are a lot of people who have had certain relationships that now that they're in practice, they try to protect those interests. Politicians are owning media houses, which does not give freedom of expression to the media. And as a journalist, if you want to be objective, I really cannot work in a platform that is owned by a politician because objectivity is questioned. And that's one of the key things for me, for the media. If objectivity is not there anymore, then why am I practicing?
Mm.
I don't want to tell lies. I want to tell the people the truth as it's happening. That's the thing about journalism. It is the truth. So if I have to jeopardize the truth for some other reasons, I don't know. I can't remain here. Actually, before I came into the corporate world, I wanted to go to an international media. I did interview, did everything. I was good to go, but they said I didn't have a skill, which was coding, being able to write codes, HTML code, CSS
Mm.
code, uh, like building websites, kind of.
Yeah.
That was the only limitation why they didn't accept me at that time, because I was going as a multimedia journalist. That was the only reason why they didn't accept me at that time. But when I came into the corporate world, I realized that life is a lot easier here. In the media, my work was 24 hours, 7 days. I didn't have weekends. I didn't have, I work nighttime, I work daytime. The only time I'm not working is probably when I'm asleep because,
Mm.
online media, the news can break at any time.
Yeah.
And we break the news before the newspaper would do. So we are always online. You're always working. I have a tab. I have a mobile phone. I have a laptop. I have devices that keeps me awake, keeps me alert. I'm kind of on the spot. You
Mm.
understand? So for most people, the reason why they leave the craft may be because of money. You work in the media that is in the media, and you are hold 6 months salaries, you are hold 1 year salary, and then you
Mm.
are not encouraged to accept the brown envelope. How do you
Yeah.
keep up? You have bills to pay. It's difficult.
Mm.
You understand? So that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons I think most people left. But I wasn't hold salary. When I worked at
Okay.
the nation, I wasn't hold salary. My salaries were paid as and when due. The only time
Mm.
we had a setback was, I think, we had issues with funding. I think 2 3 months, there was 2 3 months delayed and delay, and then when it was not funding, everybody was paid. And it was much after that I left. So I wasn't hold salary. I didn't have the
Mm.
experience of being hold salary. So that's an advantage for me though. But the
Okay.
reason why I left the craft was basically because I wasn't able to practice objectively like I really would. The passion for me is to practice
Mm.
objectively. And when I
Mm.
observed that that was in question, I sought an opportunity when I was called for this corporate work, I didn't want to. I told the person who called me, I said, I'm not coming. The person told me it's going to be a better life, you'll be better paid. I'm like, no. Where I work now, I don't earn well, I know, but then I've been able to build some corporate relationships that I value so much.
Mm.
And then one of those relationships was the one getting me this job. Like, we know what you can do. You're able to do this. Come over. I'm like, no, let me stay here. But when I kept looking at the trend within the year, and I'm like, things are not looking well. You write a story, you send it in, the kill it
Mm.
because it's against a politician, or it will expose something about the politician, and then like for how long? And these are stories that will sell the paper. These are stories that people want to read objectively, but they're not allowed to share them. So I'm like, I can't keep being here.
Mm.
Let me just opt out. So I looked at all the medium in the country at that time. Which of the media in the country is more objective
Mm.
or most objective? Perhaps maybe some in the broadcast. And then I wasn't sure I was going into broadcast at that time. No, let me just opt out and then go to the corporate world. That's why I'm here.
These years you have practiced journalism. What are your golden memories?
My golden memories.
Yes.
Ah, my golden memories would be the days I am able to freely practice journalism objectively. The
Mm.
days I was able to go to the field. I remember the day I traveled to the border, Seme border,
Mm.
with my colleagues, and then the custom had busted some smugglers, and they had some
Okay.
terrible items, and then we were able to freely go and then report the stories the way they were, and nobody was hiding anything, or at
Mm.
least as of that time, that was what it was to me. I don't know if the custom was hiding anything, but everything that they seized, so they said we are going to do some other investigation. other thing, but we're like, the ones you have seized, what do you want to do with them? And then the comptroller said that they were going to destroy everything in our presence before we left that day. And they did. We were there, we recorded, we had an interview with the cost controller, one of the smugglers that they arrested. We spoke with the guy, spoke with some other criminals that they had, and then we went with them to where they had all those items. In our presence, they heaped all of them into the trash canal and lit the place up. I was so happy, like this, I'm able to practice freely without holding back. Nobody is hiding anything. Nobody is saying, no, don't report this. No, don't snap this. No, that one is not, no. This is off the camera. Don't, it was free practice of journalism. Like I was happy returning home. And it was not a practice that when you're going back home, they'll say, take this money for your practice, for your transport, for logistics or for no, it wasn't. I've gone before like that they gave us money, but this one was not. It was just free practice, and it was a new control at that time. It was free practice, and I really enjoyed it. But beyond that, the other times I've enjoyed journalism was when I became a multimedia journalist, and I collaborated with a few colleagues to do multimedia stories
Okay.
where we were able so it was like a cross-platform collaboration where I was working with the Nation newspaper, the person was working with another platform, and then it was after a training, and then so I was close to Google Africa, Google Nigeria at that time. I was one
Okay.
of the journalists working closely with them. So and then Code for Africa, Code for so the Nigerian leg, Code for Nigeria. So one of the training we had with Code for Nigeria had to do with collaboration, cross-platform collaboration, where I am a multimedia journalist. There's another journalist that is just a writer with another platform who's doing a story, and you need some multimedia skills that you don't have. You collaborate with a colleague in another platform to provide that service, and then at the end of the story, you just give attribution. This person supported this person supported with this person supported
Yeah.
with this,
Yeah.
and then so we're able to collaborate like there are three of us. I provided the infographics, provided the data, and then did the infographics, the visualization for the story. Excuse me. And then someone else provided videography, did a short
Okay.
video, edited and added to the story. While the original person who contacted the two of us did the raw story, which was just a text. And then it was very beautiful. It was a very beautiful one. And then I also cherish the moments that I supported colleagues that were entering for awards at that time. I was able to support their work, and then they came back as winners, and I'm impressed
Wow.
because they won.
That's right.
One of
That's
them,
right.
one of them invited me to where I am now as a
Oh,
way of saying thank you.
oh, okay. Wonderful. That is some positive and quality friendships, really.
Yes.
Mm. Um, did you ever have bribery attempts on you in the line of duty? Bribery attempts.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. I had one that was very tempting. I had one very interesting one,
Mm,
and I say it was very tempting because it came at a time that I was really in need.
mm,
And like I used to tell people, I'm a Christian,
mm.
and I used to say to people that there are times that nature knows what you need or when you have needs, and then God is going to answer those needs, but as a way of testing your faith or your stance and all that, I used to call it Satan bringing blink blink, offering you something to try your faith or see if you're going to remain faithful to God.
Mm,
Those things you acclaim, those things you say you are able to do, or that you will say no to. When you are tempted with them at the times that you really need them, that I dear
yes.
need, can you really say no to them? So I think that was what happened to me. It was about the time that I was planning my wedding. Uh, I was a single man living in a one-room apartment, needed
Mm,
to get a bigger apartment, needed to set up the place. You know what it is when you're living in a single room and you're getting married, you need to get a bigger apartment. Interestingly,
yes.
I was able to raise money. I got a three-bedroom apartment. Now moving things from one room to three bedroom. is like moving, is like putting a drop of water in the ocean. You understand? Everything is
Yes,
scanty and hard to, and nothing is seen there. You
that's
get,
right.
so it was that tough. So I needed money to furnish the house. I needed money to plan for the wedding, and then I was doing a story, and then I did a story basically. Was a story that has to do with one criminal case, and then
Mm,
somebody called me and said that story should not fly.
mm,
And I was like, why shouldn't the story fly? And they said there were people who had interest. I was like, oh no, I'm sorry, this story is gone already because I already submitted it. And then they were like, no, what do we do? I'm like, it's not in my country anymore. I've done my story, I've submitted it, and of course to be published. And then while we're having the discussion and everything, the story went up, was published.
mm,
And then so they kept calling and we're like, they will see what they would do to break the story down. They couldn't call my editor, they couldn't call Mr. Autofodri, they couldn't call the news editor to bring the story down. And then they reached out again to say, you work online. The story is not in the newspaper, it's just online. Can't you bring the story down? Please delete the story. And I was like, I can't. Is the person guilty as charged? They were like,
mm,
actually, yes, but you know, this it's still, the case is in court. But when partners or clients do some searches about the business, the brand, or their
mm,
MD, that negative story comes up. Because interestingly, it was a time that I was doing some stuff with Google to do
mm,
optimization for our platform. So our
mm.
platform was really optimized. So
Okay.
if you search for certain keywords at that time on Google, if we have it on our platform, it will come up. So that was what happened. So they were unfortunate. They were really unfortunate. It wasn't a time that we're not ranking well. We're ranking well at that time. So they tried really hard, offered me. They started offering me 100,000, 100,000 naira, and I was like, 100,000 naira was a lot of money as of that time in
Yes.
the face of what I was going to do. And I was
Mm,
like, no, I won't. And then they increased it and said they're going to offer me 300,000. So the 100,000 was before the story was published. When the story was published, they came back offering me 300,000. I
the
was like,
stakes were higher.
the stakes were higher, yes. And I'm like, no, I've been saying no, and it is no. So they remained at 300,000. I was like, there's no way. And I stayed at that no because for two, three reasons. I didn't want something that, one, will make me break my faith. I have said no already, and I know it is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't come back and say yes now. I'll question my faith myself. So
Mm,
why are you saying yes now if you had said no before?
yeah.
That was one. Two, I respected my editor so much. I had a relationship with Mr. Autofodori. I respected him so much that I didn't want to do anything that would backfire tomorrow, and he would look at me disappointed,
And he is
and he'd
one
be
man
like,
of integrity.
he's a man of integrity, yes. So
Mm,
I wouldn't work with someone that had that much integrity. And then, because I know so much that if anything happens in our space, it was at the time that the nation was like testing the online media. They were not too
mm,
sure if the online media should really stand. You
yeah.
understand? So we're doing all that we could to prove that we are what it keep us.
Mm,
You understand? So if I do anything to jeopardize that moment, it's not going to backfire on me alone. It's going to backfire even on him. I'm
yes.
sure the MD will call him and say, "Well, is this what you are teaching your boys?" And
Mm,
that will really hurt me. I may not forgive myself for life. So I told him, I said, you know what? Let's just stop this. It's not gonna happen. And the guy I spoke with that time was like, okay, if I insist that they will look for someone else to do it for them, I'm like, if you find, no problem. But the truth is, the fact that I'm aware this is my story, it's a platform that I operate on. You
mm,
can't get away with this. There's just no
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So after the call, I went on to duplicate the story. I added it to a different category that they wouldn't be able to access. And
Okay.
then just because, so it was much like setting a trap. And
Mm-hmm.
then eventually they got a colleague in house to take the story down, which the person did. And then when I saw the story was down, I was able to trace because I had this grace or privilege of being able to master the back end. I
Mm,
call it a grace because I was able to do a lot with the WordPress back end that most of
yeah.
my colleagues, even till now, they still
Mm,
haven't mastered it. So I was able to know who took the story down. So I went
mm,
to the person and say, "You worked on this story." I was like, Yeah, he was editing it at the time. And so I was like, what happened to the story? I was like, he doesn't know. The story just vanished. I'm like, come clean, come clean, come clean. This guy called you, right? And told you to take the story down. He said, how did you know? I said, because they called me and I said, no. And you know it's my story. You didn't come to me. I was like, actually, sorry. They offered him 50,000 naira. And I'm like, imagine, they asked me 300,000 naira. I said, no. They paid you 50,000 naira and you took it. I was like, what? 300,000, 50,000? I'm like, that's it. They are doing business. But I'm
Mm,
like, it's sort of someone that I liked, was a very close friend at that time.
mm.
I just said, you know what? You took the story down. Yes. You told them you took the story down. I said, yes. I said, don't worry. I have the story duplicated. So what I'm going to do is I'll change the title, I'll change the headline, but that story stays online. So don't take this one
Yeah.
down. And I was like, but won't they find out? I said, they will find out, but to be a white part, they will find out. You took that one down. The link you took down, if they search for that link, it won't come up. This is a new one. So it will
Yeah.
look like an updated version. So that was how I was able to manage the situation. So yes, it was really tempting at that time. It was really tempting.
It is
I
well.
never told anyone this story.
May the grace of God be sufficient for us all.
Amen.
It's not easy.
It's not.
Political ownership of the media. So many politicians and political actors, as well as politically connected individuals, are setting up media houses. Are we in trouble? Is there trouble on the horizon? Do we have a reason to be worried?
We're in trouble and
Hmm.
we should be worried.
Hmm.
As that's the gospel truth.
Yeah.
We're in trouble and we should be worried. Honestly, we should be worried because if the politicians that we're talking about are people of integrity, to be a different thing.
Yeah.
When people who don't have integrity go into the business that requires integrity, there's business, there's problem rather.
Hmm.
There's problem already. So we're at a time that politicians know very well that the media, that's one of the reasons why media is losing credibility with the masses.
Hmm.
A lot of the medium we have in the country are losing credibility with the masses
Hmm.
because people believe you cannot trust this media, you cannot trust that platform. This platform has a reason to cut the news, they have a reason to not tell the story the way it is. And it's not just in Nigeria alone.
Yeah.
Even international media also have reasons, might not be political, it might not be political ownership, but they have different reasons why they tilt
Hmm.
the news in a certain direction, which was why eventually I opted for the corporate world because I
Yeah.
was thinking the international news platform will be different, international media will be different. But after studying international media to some extent, I found out that even they are not righteous themselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So, but in the country, in Nigeria, it is worse because we are having politicians who don't have integrity going into a space that requires a whole lot of integrity. So we're in trouble. I
Hmm.
must say.
Wow. 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 Should journalists be licensed?
Yes, yes. Journalists should be licensed. The platform, the practice should be better regulated. Um, so I had a joke one time that someone says you could be fired from AM news in the morning and then you resume to PM news in the evening. That's how, right? You fired from business day, you go to business week. That's how interesting the media is. It's
Yes.
so fluid that anybody, just anybody that is a writer thinks they could do the job of a journalist. No,
Mm,
no, you can't. Where I am now, we're experiencing some things where people whose work requires some kind of writing, like reports
mm,
writing and the likes, think they are better writers than journalists
mm,
because they are more their format. They look at things from their own perspective of writing. Like if we're supposed to write an article, they
yeah.
expect it to follow a certain format, which they would observe. But for journalism, it is not like that. For storytelling, it's not like that. I'm telling a human angle story. I will tell it from a human interest angle. It has to be able to elicit emotion from the readers. I'm not telling a report. I'm not writing a report of what has
Yeah.
happened. Uh, 1 plus 1 gave us 2.
Yeah.
No, I have to tell the relationship between one plus one. How did one come about being one? And so there's a lot of background into it and all of that.
Mm,
So I believe that yes, journalism should be licensed. And then uh, license and license renewals also should be one of the things. So when you have a license, it's because you work with a platform and then you renew your license, which is why you remain in practice. For example, I've not been in practice for a while. For this period I'm not in practice, I should not boldly hold the license because I'm not working with a platform at that time. So
mm,
I'm not actively practicing. But when
yeah.
I return to practice, I can go back and renew my license.
Mm,
That's what it should be. Because now
mm,
you have bloggers who parade themselves as journalists. But again, it's interesting that you have people who didn't even study journalism and are thriving in journalism.
yeah.
But then there will be requirements for them to take some sort of journalism training for them to then obtain the license. Because
Yeah.
there are blunders that they commit. People say this person studied microbiology, this person studied electronic
English language.
engineering, this person studied English language exactly. This person is a health practitioner or something, and they're able to become a journalist. No, they are writers.
Yes.
They're not journalists, they are writers. They may be good writers. What makes them journalists is because they write the story, they send it in an editor that knows, understand the ethics of the practice. He looks at it with the eye of a journalist. That's
Yeah.
what now makes it a journalistic content.
Yeah.
So, but when they stand on their own and they write, they cannot write as a journalist. They are
Mm,
writers. So when we need to absorb writers from other fields into journalism, they should go through. It could be 3 weeks intensive writing course, or 6 weeks, or whatever regulations is put in place. Then they obtain the license for practice.
mm,
That I think is a way to sanitize the system. We really need to do that because
yeah.
at the moment we're having all forms of everybody wants to be a journalist
Mm.
and we're losing the respect.
What stands out as your most challenging assignment?
My most challenging assignment was when a colleague asked the corporate communication person of the firm to send me
Out of what? A press conference or something?
out of an interview, a one-on-one interview with the director,
You mean your own colleague, a
my own
journalist?
colleague. Yes, the same platform.
Give us the details. What happened? Interesting.
So, yeah, right. So I was working out of town. So I was
Mm,
in a state at that time. I traveled to another state, and
mm,
then it was during my national youth service.
mm,
And like I said, I already had a relationship with the nation newspaper at that time through
yeah.
Mr. Otufoduri. So I was contributing to the platform. So then I saw a news idea in Kano State. That time, like I said, was a time that Boko Haram was at the heat of it.
Mm,
So people from down to west believed that there was basically no life in Kano State, like in the north. So when you're
mm,
traveling from the southwest or from the south to the north, people believe it's a suicide mission. What are you going to do there? You want to go die? And so
mm,
I was posted there for my service here, and everybody was afraid. And being a journalist that I am, on getting to the States, I saw life differently. Life was going well. Like the population was
mm.
still there, market was going, everybody was living fine. Life was on as normal. I'm like, so why are people afraid down southwest, down the south? But people in the south are afraid of insurgency in the north.
Mm,
People in
mm,
the north are afraid of kidnapping in the south. So when you
mm,
come from the south to the north, the people in the north will say, "How did you make it down here? That you're not kidnapped?" I'm like, everybody travels. A lot of people travel every day on the road. They don't kidnap everybody. It's just an incident that happens once in a while.
mm.
life is going on normal here. So I wanted to tell the story. So I said, okay, I'm going to tell this story, but then I need to balance it. I need to talk to the people on the street. I need to talk to corporate business owners. I need to talk to government official. So I wanted to talk to the chairman, the director of the Kano State Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Okay.
And then I got his contacts, and then we agreed on when to have the interview. But before this, the moment I arrived in the States, I spoke with my editor. Sir, good afternoon. I'm this person from so place. I'm in Kano State. I will be happy to meet you, see how we can work together. While I'm here, I might be able to do some stories. And I was like, oh, that's good, that's good. Let's see. He gave me a day. That day, I kept calling, he didn't pick. Like, missed my calls. I assumed he was busy. So it was within this period I started thinking of these story ideas. Then the week after, I got the director's green flag for the interview. And I was like, oh, great. I was sitting with the director. I'd set my midget. I'd briefed him. We're about to start the interview. So the corporate communications person for the organization came in, saw myself and the man was like, oh, sir, you're having an interview? And the man said, yes, yes, yes. This my friend came in, we talking and all that. And the guy was like, oh, please, from what media? And I was like, from the Nation newspaper. And I was like, okay. And then he stepped out and then he went to go and call the correspondent. Hey, are you aware there's another journalist from your platform in town? And I was like, how? Who? And I was like, in fact, the guy is interviewing the director as we speak. And he was like, stop him. He cannot continue. He can't continue. He cannot come into the state and he's doing interview and he's doing everything. So the guy came and said, I'm sorry, sir. This interview has to stop. And I was like, what happened? And he said he has spoken with the correspondent. The correspondent is not aware of my mission. He's not aware I was in town. He's not aware I was doing stories.
Really?
And I was like, please. And I mentioned his name immediately. Did you talk to this person? He said, yes. I'm like, and he said he doesn't know I'm in town. He said, yes, he doesn't know I'm in town and that I cannot be doing story in his state. That is the correspondent of that state. I can't just be doing story in the state. So I said, and I told the director, I said, sir, please just give me a moment. I've actually spoken with this person, but I think there's a mix-up somewhere. Just let me step out and put a call through to him and get this cleared. I'll be back in just a moment. The man was like, oh, no, that's fine. It's fine. Please just talk to him. No problem. I'm around today. So I stepped out and I called him on my phone. Good afternoon, sir. This is me, so person from the Lagos State. And he was like, yes, I remember you. I said, but someone just told me that you said you are not aware I'm in town. He said, yes, that I called him, I'm in town. Does not mean I have the leeway to keep writing, doing stories and be going everywhere.
Really?
And I was like, okay. So am I supposed to get permission for going to everywhere I'm going to do a story? I have to ask you or tell you I'm going to everywhere to do a story.
Incredible.
And it was like, I can't just be going everywhere to do interview. I'm like, okay. So I realized he was just speaking trouble with me. I was like, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't tell you I was coming here. No problem. I'm sorry. Please, myself and the director were already starting this interview. Would you just save me the grace? Let me just finish the interview with the director and then we can come back and have this conversation. Maybe when we eventually meet, because I called you the day you said we should meet. You missed my call. I didn't hear back from you. And let me just finish this interview with the man. Then you and I will now meet and then talk and then maybe move things forward from there. And I was like, no way. You cannot continue that interview. And I was like, this is going to make a mess of our platform. It's going to make a mess of not just me, not just you, but our platform, for God's sake. Please let me just finish the interview. Let us manage this situation. Let me finish the interview. And then you and I will get to talk about this. And I was like, there's no way he's going to allow me to continue the interview. Cut the story short, he didn't allow me. He told the corporate commission person to not allow me back into the premises. So when I was walking out of the place, I now asked the corporate communication person, I said, why do you think this man would not allow me interview the director? And I said, oh, so you think if you are done with the interview, the director will not give you money? I'm like, wait, if the director would give me money, I didn't even come for the money. But even if the director was going to give me money, would that stop him from collecting his own money like he has always been collecting before? Like I found out that like that's what they've been doing before. Like he's been collecting money. Like they are the ones controlling the space. So
Yeah.
every exposure they have with the director like that, they get money. Perhaps he doesn't want me to know how much the director gives him or something. And if I finish the interview, the director will give me maybe a similar amount, and I'll know that, oh, this is the amount of money he's been collecting working in the States besides his salary, none of that. I think that was why he didn't allow me to continue the story. I'm like, oh, really? Is that why you wouldn't allow me to do the story? I'm like, okay, don't worry, I'll call you back and tell him I don't need the money. I just want the story. Someone said, no, don't tell him I told you he collects money. I'm like, but you told him first that I'm here. You told him I was here. So, but just to cut the story short, I was not able to do the story.
Wow.
Unfortunately, when I went back to Lagos and started working with the platform fully, I realized it's one of our most terrible reporters, one of our most terrible correspondents who write stories that when the stories come in, you have to rewrite all over.
Did you
Although
ever
he has,
mention this incident to your bosses, like Mr. Tufodurin and
yes,
those?
I called him. I called him right after the incident right there in Kano State. I told him, sir, this is what is happening. And he was like, no, now, but you didn't you call him? I said, I called him. I told him I was in town. He was like, okay, don't worry, I'll call him now. So editor was calling him, he didn't pick. Apparently, he knew why editor was calling him. He didn't pick editor's call. And then, so the thing is, people who have had, for example, you and I started practicing at about the same time, and maybe we have about 30 years of experience in practice.
Yeah.
Or I met you in practice. You've been practicing for 30 years. Or you've been practicing for like 5 years before I came into practice. And then by the virtue of the things that I'm able to do, you became a correspondent in another state, or I grew in rank in the head office, I became an editor.
Yeah.
You understand? Now, just because you have some years of experience ahead of me in practice, you think you are still my superior. But I'm your editor at the moment.
Oh.
You understand? So he was giving me the issue of, hey, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Editor, even editor met me in practice. You understand all those things? Like, no, he cannot tell me what to do or what not to do. And so I found out that correspondents act like lords in the state. Like they are the king, they are the chief in that state. They cut the shots, they say this is what it is, and this is what it's not. And most times the media is careful of relieving them of their duties because they are the ones who knows all the nooks and crannies. They are the ones who knows all the government officials. They are the ones who get all the stories in the state. So replacing them is not easy. It's like you cutting off reports from that state all together. So you try to manage their egos, manage their issues, whatever they bring on, you try to manage it. So when I called editor was like, I'll call him. And after a while, editor come back and said he's not picking my call. And you know what? Just try to manage situations. Don't make a mess of the whole thing. Which was why I left the place peaceably. So when I came back to Lagos and told him this was what happened and everything, was like, there are people like that. I think it's one of the people we are managing their situations. It's a difficult person. Let's just see how we can do. So one time he sent a story in, and the editor was busy. The editor said, this story is just in from the States. Please come and edit the story and everything. So I became like his own editor too, because he sent stories in. I have to edit his story. Like I have to rewrite his stories. Like a lot of blunders, a lot of errors and in the story and everything. And I'm like, this is it. He was telling me he's been practicing journalism even before I even entered college. Like, do you know how many years I've been practicing journalism? How old are you? Maybe you're not born when I started practicing journalism. You're not in college. You're not And now I'm editing your story and I'm seeing this level of blunders. It doesn't go well, right? But that experience will stick with me for a long time.
Wow.
It will stick with me for a long, long time.
If we are to go back into time, up to the point maybe you finish secondary school, would you still choose journalism?
For the passion that I have for journalism, yes, I will. But for the experience practicing, maybe practicing in another country, I will. In Nigeria, the experience in Nigeria is not encouraging me to return to journalism. But I have my passion for journalism has not dropped one bit. So if I'm able to go back in time, if there's reincarnation that they used to say, like they used to say, if I have another life, I'll pick journalism. With the hope that I'll be able to practice more objectively.
My final question to you. What's your take on the brown envelope?
On the brown envelope. So I'm against brown envelope, given the fact that like you say, he that must come to equity must come
Must
with a
come with
clean
clean
hands.
hands. Yeah.
Yes. So if you're going to ask your journalists to shun brown envelope, you have to pay them well.
Mm.
Pay them as and when due. There's a platform in the country, I won't mention name, in the country where it is written, it's published on the paper that
Mm.
our journalists are not allowed to, don't offer them.
Mm.
And not them alone. There are one or two others that I know that when in my space now, when we bring journalists for our events, and then at the end of the event, we are giving them, is our policy to give them stipends for transportation.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah.
we brought you out of your space. Take this for your transportation back to where you came from. It's not so much of an amount of money, just something to
Mm.
cover for transportation. And then, because if journalists are supposed to go around doing stories, how do you expect them to move around when the salary is not even enough for their upkeep?
Mm.
You understand? Which is why we have that policy of giving them transportation just for logistics. You get,
Okay.
but
Okay.
these people would not collect it.
Mm.
These two platforms that I remember right now will not collect. Their journalists will not collect because while they are going out to do stories, they sometimes get stipends to go.
Okay.
The platform makes provisions for them to go. Like I have a story to do somewhere. There's a news somewhere. There's something happening at this place. Oh, who is going? I'm the one going. This is the amount allocated to you for transportation. So
Mm.
when you get there, there's no reason for you to collect any other transportation that's been offered you.
Mm.
You understand? So
Yeah.
if we don't want journalists to collect brown envelope, we should pay them well. We should treat
Mm.
them well. One of the advantages, one of the reasons why it was difficult for me to collect brown envelopes so much in journalism, I would say I didn't collect. I collected, but not so much. Not really. Yeah, well, I have to be honest. This
I
up to
get
my
it.
hand.
That's right.
Yeah, right. Because uh, this is a content for the public. There are
Yes.
people who come back and say, "Is that not David speaking?" We have given him brown envelope before. Yes, I collected from some people, uh, but I wasn't. I didn't collect from everywhere I went.
Mm.
I only collected when it was necessary. Like perhaps it was not that period of the month that you are proud of
Mm.
income. Perhaps towards the money they're offering or the news or the reports I'm doing for them, the money they're offering me is not enough to influence my story. I will still do my
Mm.
story objectively the way I will. You
Okay.
understand?
Yeah. I get you. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for joining us on Pens Down today.
Well, the organizations that I work with, the brands that reported when I was practicing, yeah. So the people I practice with, the brands, they give you their product, or they have the brand some keepsake that they give to you. For every meeting you go, they give you flash drive, they give you teacup, they give you water bottle, they give you midgets, they give you things
Mm.
that support your work. They give you headphones, they give you things they give you notepads, they give you pen, they give you things that will support your work. So even if they don't give you money, you know that these people give you brands or give you items that you can use in practice or use in work
Mm.
or something. So, like I said, anyway, wrapping up, if we don't want journalists to collect money, please let us pay them well. Then we can ask them, why did you collect? What was your reason for
Mm.
collecting?
Thanks for joining us. This has been Pens Down. David B. Lawal has been my guest. Thanks a lot, my brother, for your time today.
Thank you too. I'm grateful.
Right. This has been Pens Down. Grateful for your time and your company. We'll be back next time with another edition. Do stay tuned. Bye for now.